We've got the boost gauge hooked up, everything is really good. Today, we're going to be finding out how much boost this S3 is actually making. After driving it hard and enjoying it, it's made me really curious how much PSI this thing is actually making. Now to check that, we got ourselves a boost gauge and the rest of the stuff to make that all work. So let's go ahead and pop the bonnet and see where we can plumb this thing in. Now, because this is a turbo engine, we're going to have to plumb the gauge into the intake manifold because that is the last place the boost ends up being before it goes into the motor, which is even after the new map sensor that we installed in a previous video. Now, usually on these engines, people tee off the boost gauge on the fuel pressure regulator or even the blow-off valve. But because someone prior to me has actually deleted the PCV hose that goes into the bottom of the intake manifold, I've decided I'm going to utilize that instead to hook up this boost gauge. Now to start installing this boost gauge, we're going to go ahead and take off that blocked off PCV hose. Now that we've removed that hose, we can actually see that this is a 6mm hose, but the boost gauge actually needs a 3mm hose. So we've got ourselves an adapter that will help me reduce that down to the 3mm hose that we actually need. We're going to go ahead and piece this adapter together with some thread tape so that we don't actually leak boost past these threads. Now that we have this adapter pieced together, we can go ahead and cut a short piece of this 6mm hose to put onto the bottom of the intake manifold. And then we can figure out how we're going to route this 3mm hose through the engine bay and into the cabin. Now that that's all installed, we can go ahead and remove the cowl so we can gain access behind there. Okay, so now that the cowl's been moved out of the way, I decided not to actually take it off completely because the washers are still attached and I don't want to create more issues for me when I'm going to put it back together. Now the next thing we need to take out is actually the glove box so we can see where we have to route this 3mm line through the dash. Okay, so now that our glove box is now removed, we can go ahead and have a look up here just above the harness. There's a little grommet right there and that actually runs through behind the cabin filter. So we're going to go ahead and poke that through and then we can run our line through there. Okay, so the grommet is now reinstalled. We can go ahead and run this line through that hole in from the interior. But we need to also drill another hole on the other side of this cowl part and drill it in just right there. Now a lot of people usually run the line through here, but I don't want to run a risk of squishing my vacuum line and having any issues with that. So we're gonna actually drill a hole just right here and put another grommet in and then run our line through across the engine bay and into that intake manifold port. So we need to take this off and we can do that. Alright, so we're going to drill 12mm into this thing, so see how this thing goes. Okay, so now that we've drilled that hole, we can go ahead and cover it up with some paint and just touch it up so then that hole doesn't rust, just like that. And then we can go ahead and chuck our grommet through that hole and then run our vacuum line through it. Okay, so the grommet on this side is now installed. We can go ahead and start routing this 3mm hose through the grommet that is inside here and start routing the hose through the engine bay. So now that we've got our vacuum hose running through the engine bay and into the intake manifold, it's looking really good. We can go ahead and actually take apart the driver's side of the dash. So we can figure out how we're going to run that vacuum line through into the other half of this dash and into this air vent. Now I got a mate who actually 3D printed this vent gauge holder. So we should be able to actually remove these vents right here and replace it with the gauge holder. So we got to take this dash apart. Okay, so the dash is now out and we've gone ahead and actually routed this vacuum line through the dash and out this end. Now we are going to go ahead and also figure out our lights. So for the light on the boost gauge, we got a earth wire, we got a red power wire, and the orange wire is to help dim the light on the actual gauge. Now to give power to the actual boost gauge, so then the lights actually turn on, I've used a voltmeter to guess and figure out what wires on the back of this light switch do what. Now this grey wire just right here is going to be our dimmer light, and then we got this blue and grey wires that go into the far left of this switch, and that is going to be our 12 volt power, because that grey wire doesn't get any power when the light's off, but when the light turns on, that is actually receiving 12 volts. So that'll turn our lights on, the grey wire will dim our lights, and then the brown wire will earth the actual wires. Now we're also probably not going to wire into there, and I'm just going to use a little spade to connect onto the earth on the actual car. Now before we start wiring or anything of the sort, we got to disconnect our battery, because we do not want to blow any fuses whilst we're doing that or cause any other issues. So we'll disconnect that battery and start soldering. Okay, so as you guys just saw, I extended the wires actually on the gauge, but before I actually solder those wires onto the main harness on the light switch, I need to actually put the gauge into the air vent. So I need to figure out how to take that out, and then we can pull the wires through, and I'll drill a hole into the back of the vent right here, and then we'll pull the wires through and solder them into the main harness. So we got to figure out how we actually are going to take this thing off, because I've never done this before, but we'll figure it out and then we'll put this in. Okay, so I think I'm just going to leave this for now. The little pins on the side of the air vent are a little bit hard to get in, and before I get frustrated and break something, I'm just going to leave them and start soldering the wires into the back of the light harness and putting the rest of the dash back together. And whilst I'm doing that, little miss over here is putting some shelves together so I can put all my car parts and chairs and other stuff onto the shelves and get them off the ground so we can have more room for other projects. The interior is now back together. The gauge is looking pretty good, almost like it was just made to be there. We also need to go ahead and put the wipers back on in the engine bay and the roll bar. But we also got done the shelves. Now I'm really happy about that, because we can finally move all these parts off the ground. And then we'll have a nice, more open area to actually do stuff in this place. And then once we're done that, we're going to take this thing out for a test drive. The shed is finally looking really good. I'm so happy with the way that these shelves have come out, and it's looking way more organized in here. So I'm finally feeling really good about this shed. The S3 is finally back together as well, and it's ready for a test drive. So without further ado, let's see how much boost this thing's actually making. Alright, so we're in the S3, boost gauge is working. I'm in third, we're going to go to a pull up to 80. So let me know how much boost this thing's making, alright? I don't know about you guys, but that looked about like 20 PSI. Now, I don't know if you guys can quite hear, but just down where the shifter is, you can hear that grinding noise. You'll hear it again, hold on. Just right there. And that's the downpipe. I originally showed you guys in a previous video, but basically on the downpipe, on the flex pipe, someone has actually gone ahead and put it on, but it's rubbing on the tail shaft. It's not really good, and it sounds horrible. It's kind of ruins their experience in the car a little bit now that the car's actually driving really good. So definitely expect that in an upcoming video. We're going to get a whole entire exhaust system done on this thing. But let's head back to the shed. Well, there it is, guys. According to the boost gauge, it's making around 20 PSI. So I believe this thing's actually tuned. Now, we're definitely going to be doing in the next video that downpipe, because I'm sick of having it scraping against the tail shaft. It's really, really annoying. So if you want to see that done to the car, make sure to subscribe down below. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.